Hello, everyone. My name is James Williams, known to the industry as Mr. Connectivity, and a very warm welcome to a live webinar put together in conjunction with VOX Solutions and the GSMA. Now, the past year or two, I've done quite a few in-person events with VOX Solutions and the GSMA all over the world, bringing together mobile network operators to talk about everything business messaging related. As you know, many of you will know me personally, and I am absolutely an evangelist of business messaging of all types and all channels, but I have a special love of good old SMS, which has been around since December the 3rd, 1992, officially. And it still does a lot of heavy lifting globally. It provides some great revenues for mobile network operators and some very, very nice margin. But it is under threat and it's not without challenge. But where there is challenge, there are also opportunities. We're here to talk today to talk about how autonomous artificial intelligence is transforming messaging security. I've got some fantastic folk with me today, and I'd like to start off by introducing them. Alan, take it away. Who are you?
Thanks, James. Hi, everybody. I'm VP of Engineering here at Vox. And like you, James, I've been in the industry a very long time. I've been building firewalls for 20 years now. So
Wow.
it's, as you say, it's a very interesting industry. I'm very excited to be able to be here and show everybody what we've been working on in Vox. Autonomous AI is such a huge thing now. It means all things to all people.
Yeah.
But we're here to show how it can practically help people, how we are wielding the AI and the new advancements to help MNOs, to help our partners in the area of SMS. So I'm excited.
That's fantastic because so many people use AI. We see it in so much marketing, so many posts. But okay, great. Actually, it's nothing new. I'm sure you'll be mentioning that, Alan, later. AI isn't actually nothing new. It's been around for a long time. But how does it practically help mobile network operators in particular, who we're really talking about today? So thanks. Great to have you with us, Alan. Maya, next up, please introduce yourself. Go for it.
Hello, hi everybody,
Hi.
and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Maya Alexanyan. I'm the product manager at VOX, and in today's session, I will be explaining what is CLARA and why and how it goes beyond the classification to deliver real revenue protection and autonomous operations. So, looking forward.
Fantastic. Next up, we have Kenichi. Good to see you again. Hi.
Good to see you too, James. Yeah, it's Kenichi Okeleke here, Senior Director at GSMA Intelligence, which is a research arm of the GSMA. It's a pleasure to be here, with you all on the line. And today I will be sharing some insights from some research we've done on A2P SMS trends, as well as some other research we're doing generally on the way operators are thinking about AI and what role this could actually play in the A2P SMS business.
Fantastic. Great to have you with us. If there is an association out there that can provide a global overview, it is the GSMA. So great to have you with us again. And last but by no means least, Theodore, take it away. Who are you?
Yeah, that sounds like a deep question, you know. Thanks, James, and thank you all for being here. So I'm the Chief Business Development Officer in VOX, so strategy and commercial are mostly with me, but I'm involved in most of the monetization projects that we have globally, over 25 now in different regions. So I do see how messaging is evolving and how those trends hit in different regions. So let's say I'm fortunate in that case, so I hope to mention some of that today and discuss with everyone here how AI and the latest technologies can basically make an impact in operators' revenues and how SMS will look for the future.
Fantastic. Theodore, you mentioned the word evolving, and for me, that is exactly what business messaging has been doing the past few years. And personally, as I've gone around the world advising different companies, including mobile network operators and individual operators and groups, I'm seeing more and more taking a direct, very keen interest in taking more ownership of business messaging themselves and not just leaving the full revenue play and everything to aggregators. They want to do more themselves. But it's not easy. There are lots of challenges out there. And I think those of you out there who will know anything about SMS will know there's a very big difference between the world of, I suppose you could call it person-to-person, P2P SMS, and application-to-person, A2P SMS. It's a very different ball game, and it's not something that comes naturally to mobile network operators, but there are plenty of great companies around that can really facilitate that move for mobile network operators. And ultimately, that's what today is about. So without further ado, Kenichi, as I mentioned to people, the GSM Association, the GSMA, perfectly placed to provide a global overview. If you take it away and just let us know what's going on in the world of business messaging and, most importantly, A2P SMS today. Thank you.
Thanks, James. If we move to the next slide. Okay, so I will be presenting some market overview, what things are looking like now and how things have evolved in the last few years in the messaging landscape. So if we move on to the next slide. So I guess a good place to start is to remind ourselves of how important SMS as a service is in the mobile industry as a whole. Essentially, every single mobile subscriber, everyone that owns a mobile phone with an active service contract, that is equal to the addressable user base of SMS. And according to our figures in GSMA intelligence, that's about 5.75 billion people, very rapidly approaching 6 billion people around the world. So this begins to give us an idea of the scale, or rather the potential scale of the SMS market. But we all know, for those of us who have been in the industry for a few years now, that in the last 2 decades, thereabout, we have seen the messaging landscape evolve quite rapidly, okay, with the emergence of the OTT platforms. And essentially, many of these platforms have pretty much, to a very large extent, cannibalized the P2P SMS market. So today, if you think about, the two, most popular platforms out there, WhatsApp, in the rest of the world, and WeChat in Chinese markets, together, they both have over 4 billion active users, and that's quite a lot, right? Before they came on the scene, these were users who perhaps would have been using SMS for most of their messaging conversations. But SMS still remains a universal standard, and there are lots of benefits. It brings both to providers and also to users, right? Accessibility, reliability, and of course, there's an inherent trust in operator products. At the GSMA, we like to talk about this a lot because as an industry association, we are, very keen to help preserve trust in the services provided by the mobile industry. So there is that inherent trust in mobile operator service. If we move on to the next slide. So I talked about the P2P SMS market, having seen significant cannibalization from the OTT players. But what that meant was, over the years, operators had still held on to their A2P business. This had continued to generate, significant revenue for them with very decent margins on it. But in the last few years, it appears, that things are beginning to change. As a matter of fact, 2023 turned out to be a pivotal year for A2P business messaging, as we saw volumes begin to decline for the first time. So the chart was showing on the screen shows that if this trend continues, if nothing changes, if operators are unable to make their A2P SMS business more competitive than it is now, then we're likely going to see that decline continue over the next few years. So there are several factors driving this. Of course, the rise of alternative providers, having made a headway in the P2P market. Now they're also beginning to encroach in the A2P side of the business. There are issues around, SMS fraud, and of course, pricing is a major issue as well. With A2P SMS services in some markets being priced in ways that make them less competitive in relation to alternative services. And then there are voice channels also that are also encroaching on A2P services. So these are some of the headwinds that operators are facing in this area. I will speak a bit more about this, but I think I'll hand over to Theodore now in the next slide to give us some more information around what he's seeing on his side.
Yeah, thank you, Kenichi, and thanks a lot for mentioning that. I think working with operators in different regions, that's in line with what we're seeing. However, I will say that depends a lot on few factors that we will maybe deep dive on later. So yes, generally speaking, I think we've all seen the A2P SMS market, especially on the international side, reached its peak 2 years ago. That's clear. We've mentioned that some regions reached that peak before. For example, Asia is very mature and other regions are still seeing growth in some places. But it's also for every operator to decide how SMS, or what is the story of A2P SMS within their network, right? Because a lot of variables differ. Taking a step back, it's intriguing, right? I mean, we see that business messaging as a whole, of which SMS is a segment, is growing, right? And that's growing every year, 6%, perhaps more. It depends on which report we're looking at. But A2P SMS, as Kenichi has mentioned, it's going down, right? Although there is a need for enterprises to connect more of their customers, although with AI we will have personalization, hyper-personalization, etc. So there is a context for increased communication between enterprises and consumers, right? So while that pie is growing, the share of A2P SMS is shrinking. It's a bit counterintuitive, right? I think we all agree to that because SMS is virtually every phone. It's familiar to everyone. It has one of the highest, if not the highest, opening rate. So why is it really losing its share? It's clear that something is wrong. And from what we've seen, in line with what you've mentioned, Kenichi, yes, it's few things. One, the prices keep going up. That's for a variety of reasons, but also on the MNO side, there is obviously the desire to keep on increasing revenues and management planning on how revenues can increase year on year and that sort of thing. But we need to start looking long term, not just short term from our point of view. There's the fraud side, right? Fraudsters continue to, I'll say it in brackets, innovate. Fraud is dynamic. Fraudsters also have AI now, right? So we need to be smarter than them. We need to be faster than them. We need to be proactive, not only reactive as well. And the last thing are the other channels, right? In some regions, some of you will know that WhatsApp for Business has lowered their prices to around 1 cent in a vast majority of countries, right? A2P SMS on the international side is, in some cases, 15, 20 times higher than that, right? Enterprises are also looking at costs, not just at opening rates. So in the end, there is also competition that didn't used to exist, right? So that's something to consider. And in line with what Kenichi is also saying. And I think, James, you and me, we see eye to eye in this. I believe SMS is, I hear in a lot of places, SMS is dying, SMS is going to consolidate to a small size, etc. I actually don't think that's true. I think that SMS is changing, and I think that basically SMS needs to, as we've said, evolve. SMS needs to be more competitive and just recentered a bit, right, in today's business context.
I agree and take with you, Taylor. And one thing we've got to mention or touch on during this conversation today is regulation. So if you look around the world, different countries have different regulations. So for example, in Malaysia, I personally view it as a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. I get why they did it, but the regulator in Malaysia banned the usage of any links within any SMS, any A2P SMS. And I get why they did it, but it's actually very, very short-sighted because a lot of benefits come from marketing, from updates, and here are the directions to the hotel, the event, and here's the Google Maps link, or whatever it might be, dropped into the SMS, comes from those things. And in other countries, seeing Indonesia, for example, when it comes to two-factor authentication, saying, right, from now on, we don't want any, we are making legislation that there will be no two-factor authentication messages delivered, codes or numbers, whatever it is, delivered via OTTs. So it's actually pushing it back to SMS, rather ironically. So it is in flux. And I agree, SMS will have a place, but lots of things have got to shake out to really see what we're left with in the next few years.
I agree with you. And maybe I'm just going to share something like a personal experience of that. I've been to a very good conference last year. Actually, it was M360 Doha, and I was discussing with the regulators there and with the market. They were very advanced in terms of AI, obviously, generally throughout the economy, but also a lot into SMS. I was quite impressed. And I think with AI today, it's very important. And I think by looking at the participants, I know that I see some friendly faces from the regulation side as well. Thanks a lot for joining. It's important to take a stance on that because it's the foundation in a way and the shield that operators have in order to remain competitive in today's market, and timing is important, right? Now, if we go a bit further and to the next slide, I think it's still sure we need to use AI. We need to make use of everything that is existent today. But the question still remains why, right? And that's what I think it's good to touch base on before, because on that thing that SMS might be falling, I still believe that we need to understand as an ecosystem why it is extremely important that we make sure that A2P SMS remains sustainable, right? For mobile network operators. The first thing is control. SMS is a channel that operators control. Yes, control maybe for international A2P SMS is not 100%, right? Because you cannot be directly interconnected with all the enterprises, right? And there are also the enterprises that play something in this or as a role. But nevertheless, it is an operator channel, right? Other IP-based channels are not operator channels. So they are, how I call it, I would say we would have visibility over them for the next years, but in the end, commercial terms are not something that the operator can decide on for the longest time, right? There's two parties in that discussion. It's not just the operator deciding what is the market rate and the condition that they want to go at, and that. So that's one thing. The second thing is performance in terms of financials, and here I've seen a lot of different ranges. But what I can tell you is that I've seen SMS in certain networks bring even up to 15% of EBITDA. So from 5% to 15%, although for revenues accounts for less, it's highly profitable, it's high gross margin, and very important to CFOs, right? So as from a cash flow point of view, A2P SMS is important and needs to be guarded for MNOs. That's a two-sided blade, right? I also believe it's one of the reasons which operators have triggered these higher prices, right? Because in the end, it is profitable, it is important, and if you're having challenges on other sides, you might look at A2P SMS in order to create more revenue, but it becomes unsustainable, right? So that's the conversation we're having today. And thirdly, it can be more than what it's currently doing today, right? So I think we're going to discuss into that. But today, SMS it's just a channel, right? It's one size fits all, right? There's, for example, for local A2P SMS, it's the same price for most of the brands, for all of the use cases, and it doesn't have analytics within, right? Or other things that, for example, an OTT channel, an IP-based channel would have, right? So I think that's the interesting discussion today. I think that's the great part of AI, and something that we're probably going to discuss further on. How can AI make SMS more interesting, more up to date, and very worthy competitor to all these new IP-based technology that have emerged in the market in the past years? So thanks a lot for listening. I think that's my take on the market. And I'm going to pass it to Kenichi, as I know that he mentioned he will talk about AI as a whole within the operator space and then within the messaging space.
Theodore, just one thing before we hand to Kenichi, just mention as well that I'm seeing, for example, voice. Voice is, for so many years, has been talked about, oh, voice is history, voice is toast, voice is dead, but actually making a huge resurgence on the enterprise communication side of things. So there are cycles to certain things, and definitely SMS is going through one right now.
If you've looked at the, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you've looked at the
go.
I'm sure that you have based on your comment, there's a lot of companies that are growing fast with the rebirth of, let's say, voice with AI, right? And there's quite a few unicorns out there that are getting listed at this point in time with voice, and surely soon to come there are others. So I think, as you're saying, just like that's happening with voice, SMS is even in better shape than voices, than international P2P voices, right? So I think it's the right time, and it takes us to and the ecosystem to move a bit fast, because enterprises tend to move fast, right? AI by nature is something that is moving fast at this point in time. So if we can do that as well as an ecosystem, I think we're going to be in good shape for growth.
Yeah, totally agree. Kenichi, over to you. Thank you. Thanks, Theodore.
Thanks, Theodore. So if we move on to the next slide. So the use of AI in messaging. If we move on to the next slide. Yes, so I talked about, a study we did in the last 12 months, thereabout, where we looked at, trends that we're seeing in the A2P SMS business. We identified that volumes were coming under increasing pressure. And of course, this would also, impact on revenues and eventually long-term sustainability of the SMS business. But at the end of the study, we came up with a number of recommendations, okay, which can be grouped into two buckets, really. Recommendations on how operators can sustain the A2P SMS business. Theodore was talking a bit on some of these points a little earlier, but I'll just highlight those two. One, maintain trust in the A2P business channel, considering that, when issues around fraud arise, enterprises get worried, customers get concerned, and once there is that loss of trust in that particular channel, it could accelerate the shift to alternative channels, right? So for operators, there is a need to put in place solutions that can help them to maintain trust in the SMS business. But beyond that, they also need to grow the revenue, okay, intake from that business. And one of the ways that can be achieved is to enhance the competitiveness of the A2P SMS channel. So we think that putting these two together could lead to sustained growth of the A2P SMS channel. But the question we're asking today, and I think that's going to be, the main focus of our conversation: can AI serve as an enabler? Okay, AI, it's not new; it's been around for a long time. But before it came to the level of consciousness that we have of it now, many of these tasks, operators have been doing using other solutions. But the question now is, what can AI do to help in maintaining trust in SMS and enhancing the competitiveness of this particular channel? So if we move on to the next slide. Move on to the next slide. Not a slide before this. So I wanted to use these slides to show us a survey that we run every year. We've been running this survey for over 4 years now. We call it the Network Transformation Survey. Every year, we survey 100 mobile operators all around the world to understand their priorities in key solutions. And AI was, one of the topics that we featured in the very latest survey that we have out there. And what's become clear to us is that for operators around the world, AI is now a key priority, right? Most operators are thinking about how to use AI. The way we see it is that operators, sit in a very interesting position. One, their networks, enable the distribution of AI solutions to end users, but at the same time, they can themselves and should, in all cases, find ways to use AI to improve their operations and their services. So this particular slide is showing us, what operators think about using AI, within their operations. And the top priorities, which we identified, and we have labeled those as, act early. So jump in, begin to work on those right now. Improve customer experience, create, AI-driven new revenue streams, and then improve network planning. So there are so many ways operators could apply AI to, if I take the points there on, improving revenue growth within their operations. But for the purpose of the conversation we're having today, it's very clear that there is an opportunity to actually use this within the A2P SMS space. Okay, and there are many solutions out there. I'm sure, when Maya and Alan begin to speak, they will go into some more details about, some of the solutions out there. But I'm just going to end with the next slide, which is to highlight the AI opportunity in the A2P SMS business. There are so many potential applications. So this is not by any means an exhaustive list. So maintaining trust can be used, to identify fraudulent traffic, to redirect, traffic to paid channels, to identify and block, fraudulent messages or spam, to filter, threats that may be going through the SMS channels, that could be to the detriment of the enterprise customer, or to the end user. So we have all of those solutions out there that could be used to maintain trust. But I just highlighted one out there, which is, to enhance competitive revenue optimization. In the report I talked about earlier, which will be out in the next few months, actually, we have identified, differentiated pricing as one opportunity that operators could use to become more competitive, especially when you consider the alternative channels out there who are able to do this very, very well. Now, the traditional telco network, okay, and pricing strategies, it tends not to be that flexible, okay? But with AI, there is now this opportunity for operators to be more innovative, more flexible, in terms of introducing differentiated pricing, which opens up that opportunity to become more competitive. And so this is one area that we have seen. We think it's interesting. There are lots of use cases out there. There are lots of applications that are beginning to spring up, some by VOX Solutions. And I think, we'll hear colleagues on the line talk a bit more about those. So this is it from me, highlighting some of the work we've been doing in this area. And our view really is that as operators increasingly apply AI to different areas within their network operations, using it to preserve the A2P SMS business and of course drive revenue growth will be one key application that we should look out for going forward. Okay, so back to you.
Kenichi, thank you so much. We first met last year, I think 13, 14 months ago. And I remember in your presentation at that event, the figure from the GSMA was 5.25 billion subscribers, 5.25. So it's gone up over 500 million in just over a year.
Indeed.
So that's huge. That really is huge. So
yeah,
actually,
so who knows? Maybe by the next time we speak, we're up to 6 billion.
yeah. So things are moving really, really fast. Anyway, Alan, over to you. You're the VP of Engineering. It's your job to make all of this a reality. We're going to be talking about differentiated pricing, but what intrigues me is why do you think, Alan, the industry did not do differentiated pricing from the start 20 years ago?
Well, obviously, what we will and what Maya will present about our CLARA product now will explain that this is just not really that feasible in the past. We didn't need to. I think it was a commercial thing. I think mobile operators just, SMS was a growing channel. They were making their money. Now that they start seeing that big competition from WhatsApp and OTT players, that now is the time where they need to start thinking of innovative new ways of doing this. So we have a confluence now of the timing commercially and technologically, because we can do it now. We can take a look at the messages and validate what type of messages that they are and the value that they're bringing and price them accordingly. And this is something that I think any of the operators that we've talked to have been very excited about doing, because they're always a challenge in their home markets.
I agree, Alan. I think that's right. I think it's a mix of things, right? Technology and kind of like context, as you mentioned as well, of need for it as well, as we put it. That's right. I think maybe a bit before we go specifically into the product, anything else, maybe I'll just mention a few things that we try to do globally and what we see, and build up on what Kenichi mentioned for AI. So, Christina, if we could go to the next slide. So we seeing so many networks and working in so many collaborations within the past years, we've understood this being our bread and butter. What are aspects which are extremely important in today's A2P SMS context, both for the international A2P SMS side and for the local A2P SMS side. But specifically on international A2P SMS, is that decline is steeper than on the local side, based on also what the GSMA intelligence reports finds. We try to always build few pillars in order to really be able to monetize A2P SMS. And that's where AI comes in, right? And I know that Alan and Maya will talk about this, but in short, fraudsters are using AI, right? Also, we're not the only ones. Everyone has this technology available. So we also need to do that in order to safeguard the network and monetize A2P SMS, right? Then on the pricing side, we've mentioned A2P SMS is rigid, right? AI can be used in order to implement value-based pricing or use case pricing. So having a SMS cost differently for a one-time password to a notification message, right? And also to be able to identify flash calls or other types of voice alternatives that are being used today, which can then be controlled, right, and billed by operators in order for that to be revenue, which today is not the case sometimes, as for example, a flash call is a missed call, right, which used for authentication. So that's what we do across different networks today. But I know everyone is curious on how do we do it exactly and go to the details. So I'll hand it over to Alan and Maya to talk about that.
Thanks, guys. So I mean, it's a great lead in. Obviously, we are tending to use AI will solve everything. This is what AI, but what does that actually mean? Applying AI doesn't mean it's just send it to ChatGPT and get it to figure it out for you, right? We have to engineer into our products autonomous systems that can continuously add this value to protect your network from fraud, to block the grey routes, to analyze and give you very detailed insight into what's happening on the messaging. And Maya will talk us through kind of that part of it. But from a product perspective, AI embedding within the product, you have to build the product around AI now. You can't just kind of take the product and then just go, right, I'm going to just take this part and just, put in an AI system. So we have taken firewalls, which I think a lot of people are very familiar with. You take a text message, you scan it, whatever. We've taken AI at the heart of it and built the firewall around this. Okay. Ultimately, though, it is a system that needs to be deployed on a mobile network. It has to be telecoms grade, it has to be reliable. I think we're all familiar with the power of generative AI now. We can ask ChatGPT anything now and it'll give you a good answer, but it hallucinates, right? So you have to gauge that against what you actually want to do on the network, how effective it's going to be, and how it really helps you. But going back to what Kenichi said earlier about the actual kind of customer experience improvements is what AI is going to promise for mobile operators. It will be more effective at helping us stop spam, stop smishing. And as we've discussed there, it will help us give that insight into helping us optimize the revenue of what type of messaging is going across our network, which are the brands sending the messages, are they real brands, all this sort of stuff. This is what AI will help you see as a mobile operator. They are the key benefits. They will reduce your cost. It'll be more effective. But how do we do it? I think I can hand that over to Maya.
So just one thing there, that we actually had a question from a participant here asking, in Costa Rica, the cyber crimes are growing fast. Could you please talk about how AI could help to mitigate smishing? I think you've answered that perfectly.
Yeah, Glenn, I absolutely. Well, it's a very vague answer, but no, very specifically with smishing, AI absolutely will help because we can identify those types of messages that are attempting to, fool the customer into doing something. But that's not really enough. You have to go deeper, figure out that the call to action that they have, the link, for example, or the whatever they're asking you to do and click on or respond to or call, that is actually a real place, that it's not a scammer. And AI has a crucial role to play in that.
Fantastic. And apologies, I'm a very bad moderator. I should have said right at the beginning, if you have any questions, please do drop them in and we can all see on the Q&A. So thanks, Glenn. And anyone else, please feel free to ask.
Okay.
All right, I believe we can move forward. And can you please, yeah, and the next one as well. Yeah, cool. Right, so we talked about AI in A2P space, mentioned opportunities, revenue, compliance, which has a cornerstone, as Alan mentioned, under the name of firewall. In messaging, your firewall is your first and sometimes only line of defense, and it decides what should get through, what should be blocked. However, most firewalls, they were developed some years ago and they did not keep up. They were built for spam, but today they are expected to protect revenue. Next slide, please. So at first, firewalls were just simple. They were blocking a few keywords, they were filtering out spam, process, allowing and blocking lists, and done, boom. That was completely fine when SMS was just a communication tool, but then something changed and SMS became a revenue stream. Fraudster noticed that. They spotted the vulnerabilities which analysts could not keep up with. They would spend hours fighting against the false positives. They would spend more hours to write more exceptions, which was causing a lot of complications. Next slide, please. Gen 2. That was fun because it was responding to the key problems and pains of the data analysts. They were building smarter filters, regex, rule sets, and of course more conditions. It's new rules which are coming with a big power, obviously, but also a lot of manual work. So analysts would spend hours and hours on chasing patterns, updating filters, fixing mistakes. It was scaling with human effort, but could not scale with growing traffic, which was boosting in a few decades after the emerging of the firewalls themselves. Next slide, please. Gen 3 came the machine learning, which would detect some fraud automatically, but it demanded continuous supervision, babysitting. It was trained and needed retraining, bringing also more monitoring and more dashboard reviews. Again, cool, but super people heavy. And the next generation, next slide, please. Gen 4, as we call that internally, the deep learning. Deep learning came and added the context and added better semantics, but also brought more dashboards and more tools and more complications. It increased the whole GPU or any hardware cloud costs. That, of course, was too expensive. Next slide. The question now. So what if all the previously mentioned problems would not exist? And what if you would have a platform that could think instead of you? Not just a smarter firewall like Gen 5, but not a firewall at all. A system of agents who observes, highlights, knows what's new, tags, and brings to the surface only what matters. And here we are with CLARA, our product. It's an autonomous platform which understands campaigns, patterns, and business context and groups related traffic automatically. That's the most fun part. Imagine catching and understanding anomalies in business terms. For example, a national holiday that would confuse the analysts, for instance, living in a different culture or time zone and having no clue why the messaging is dropping or spiking within a few hours. And then Clara knows, oh, it's just a holiday and people are just typing each other a lot of messages in this moment. So it brings you the reasoning, it brings you the semantics, and on the top of that, it does the automatic enforcement. So you don't need to interact with that at all. Next slide, please. So why Clara? There are a few key points, key values. It's much more, but they are the ones that you need to memorize probably. Clara replaces the need for human intervention and it never sleeps. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't have a family to spend with. So it just works 24/7. Your data stays yours. Clara is deployed on premises and is fully aligned with your privacy requirements and the regulations whenever needed. It runs on your existing infrastructure. It's not expensive GPUs or specialized hardware. And the last, Clara grows with you. So it's modular enough to scale with new use cases like the pricing, brand, categories, and many, many other use cases that are emerging every day at the moment. Next slide, please.
Maya, sorry I'm interrupting you, but we have a question
Sure.
from Alex Camacho, and I think you've answered it with a fairly nice example there already. So another great job, and you didn't even know you're doing it. What are some real-world examples where CLARA AI identified fraud patterns that legacy systems completely missed? And I think that example of a national holiday is a really good one, because you're suddenly seeing a massive spike of certain types of messaging, and you're thinking, oh, this is fraud, this is generated traffic or whatever it is, artificially generated traffic, but actually isn't, because it's a holiday. So because it's a holiday, allow some extra slack before flagging something up as potentially artificially inflated. So that was a good example there. Yeah.
You might even jump as a data analyst without Googling what's going on in that region. You would just blog and then it would cause some complaints. So it's a vicious circle of the problems coming each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is, I guess, the point. I think the term legacy system, we have the firewall, but this is the management of the firewall. So effectively, where people were doing this before, CLARA does it now. Exactly as you mentioned, when we see things, and a human will go and look. So, for example, is this a national brand, or is it an international brand that's sending the traffic through a national route, which isn't really a good idea, right? So, finding out if that brand exists, is it a real brand? CLARA does this. In the past, you'd have to have your analyst Google it if they're not familiar with the country, because obviously we manage many of the firewalls around the world. But specifically in the country, it's the same problem. So In terms of finding new fraud, and I think we mentioned smishing and spam before. Again, it's the same concept here. As we see, and Theodore mentioned it, as we see spam increase, smishing increase, and using AI to get around pre-existing firewalls, all those new techniques. Maya mentioned it. It's the semantic understanding of what this message is trying to do that we can understand now using the latest AI.
And I think it's important to reduce false positives. I don't know about you all watching this, listening personally, but I've experienced more false positives in terms of online payments and this and that, with payments being blocked and held by the bank, and you've got to ring up. I had this yesterday, and this was a payment to me, and it was suspected money laundering, and I had to be on the phone to the HSBC for 30 minutes, and it was just soul destroying because it's an existing customer making a regular payment. What's going on here? So that's in the world of payments, and it happens in messaging all the time. And if these messages are held back and not delivered, and they're urgent, this can really, really impact the customer experience, and you can lose business over it.
No, absolutely. And of course, banks are one of the main customers for MNOs in terms of delivery of A2P SMS notifications and authentication. So if there is any sort of issue with that, I mean, it really affects people's day-to-day lives. So in terms of AI, in terms of where we are now, analysts are humans. Humans make mistakes. As you mentioned, AI, I started using AI in SMS in 2009, only maybe a few years ago, but I have actually trusted it now because of this semantic understanding to do actual blocking and to make the correct decision. Back in with statistical machine learning models like support vector machines, things like that, you just couldn't. And as Maya alluded to, it's a huge amount of retraining. Every place you go into, you have to do it for each language, each region. Our system doesn't need that. Our system is automatically multilingual. It automatically understands what's happening, doesn't need retraining. As Maya said, it doesn't need a huge amount of GPUs, which is the compute power required for the modern LLMs, because we have a very specific way of doing this. So we can upgrade existing systems to take advantage of this without having to install new hardware or have custom virtual machine infrastructure that you need in your telco cloud. In terms of the results, my favorite result of this is the first one, 95% more revenue protected. Now, again, to be very clear about this and very specific, when traffic is going through and you have an analyst, a human that must kind of oversee and do this, you have automated rules. I mean, most firewalls will have automated rules. But when they don't have automated rules, and when you are looking at the traffic, and analysts need to make these decisions, a human needs to be looking at it. They need to either get alerted. They need to, some AI can kind of help with that, of course, in existing systems, as we've already done before ourselves. But in this case, you have a 24/7 AI continuously looking at this. So the quicker it can identify these new streams of gray roots or techniques, the quicker it can actually block it. And in this case, this is in comparison with what our human analyst would have done. This is a very specific test we did.
But no, we have not fired any human analysts.
No, but again, resource usage. Like most operators won't have, to operate, 24/7 firewall analyst team, at least 5 people. What operator is going to want to do that? With AI, you can have this, and it's automatically making blocking decisions, automatically going down to very fine-grained detail of all the campaigns that are happening from an A2P perspective to give you that huge business intelligence that you need. But of course, it does unlock those new use cases we mentioned with regard to value-based pricing and other optimizations that you can do. But most importantly for us, it is about eliminating gray routes. It's about eliminating fraud and smishing on the network to make sure that your customers have, a very good experience and trust is maintained in the channel.
But that's, if I may just mention something, that's also important on the regulation side, right? Because having automated rules versus having a person actually looking at that, right? Versus AI. AI is so much better for that, not only in terms of like real-time reaction and availability 24/7, right? But also in the fact that there's virtually no human looking at that. So that's important, right? It's deployed within the country, content doesn't leave the country. It's just basically AI looking to make sure that we block fraud. So I think that's important, and regulation is catching up with that.
Yeah, and of course, just to answer the couple of questions here. Accuracy and false positives. Of course, I mean, it's a normal system. What we are looking for is the fact that it is no worse than a human. Okay, that it's faster than a human, it's always on like a human, it uses fewer resources, but that the accuracy and the effectiveness of it is no less than what we currently have in terms of our state-of-the-art systems using firewalls. And then, of course, it's not about Anastasia, the jobs. What this allows you to do is devote your team to higher level things. So for example, the smishing example was mentioned earlier, new techniques of smishing, new ways of doing that. You still need a firewall rule to obviously take some of the more complicated techniques that the attackers are using. Because of course, once you start blocking this, they're very motivated to find new ways to get around that. So it moves them into a higher level of a role to try and do that. But for greenfield sites or operators that can't devote these resources, CLARA will give them all this additional information, this additional value as part of the actual system.
Yeah, and Alan, if I can add to this, 10 years ago, I did some work for a mobile operator group, and we were implementing a firewall. And practically at the last minute, the team managing the SMS, so the support team managing the SMSE stepped in with concerns, which froze the whole project for months. The mobile operator lost hundreds of thousands in revenue because of this. And they were actually scared about the job situation. Oh, if we've got a firewall in, that will mean there's less SMS and there's less requirement for support personnel. It's actually the opposite. If you have the firewall in, but most importantly, a great managed service, and this automates it and brings AI in, you will actually get more business. So therefore, it's even more important things are operating fine 24/7, 365. So you might actually need more support people. Who knows? So it is actually something basic, but this is a resistance I've seen so many times and a pushback from operators over the years and people concerned about literally jobs. So it's a really good question, Anastasia, but actually this adds and it expands to a mobile operator's portfolio and will require more personnel.
Right. It's the same thing. Like, people will, new capabilities come out, technology, moves on and you find a new role. And in this case with CLARA, it enables people who aren't those direct operational people to actually interact with this system and get what they want. They need a specific type of report. They need something, an automated workflow that can do these things to be alerted. And, an agentic system is the way things will go for almost every business. So having this there, being able to use this is also future-proofing your role because you're effectively the manager of all these little agents doing things and getting used to that. So it supercharges your productivity within the operator and your department. So this is how we frame it. In terms of VOX and the team we have, those same concerns were raised. But the reality is they are now working at that higher level and they're just super productive in terms of what they're doing. The value that they're adding now is at a much higher level because all that lower level manual stuff that they were doing, clicking here, categorizing there, that's all taken away now. Of course, we have to validate the system. We're continuously doing that to improve it. But at the end of the day, that whack-a-mole situation goes away and it helps humans move to a higher level, more value-added system.
Fantastic. Alan, Maya, thank you very much. We're coming up, believe it or not, already to the last 5 minutes of the webinar. So I think it's time for our closing remarks. And I'll start with Kenichi. Kenichi, what you're seeing here from VOX with CLARA, you're very, very close. You and your team are very close. Obviously, you've got through your surveys, through your day-to-day contact with operators in person at so many GSMA events around the world through the year, you come into contact with mobile operators. Are you seeing that something like CLARA is what mobile operators require now in order to be able to take control of the business messaging that so many really want to know?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, James. I would say so. I think the potential is very, the case is very clear, why a solution like CLARA is something operators should be considering. It's a no-brainer that they have to do something about the messaging business. It's a high, margin business, low effort business. that it would be a shame really if the industry were to completely lose that revenue stream, or for it to, become so negligible, that we stop talking about it as an industry, the messaging business. So solutions like CLARA really, create opportunities to rethink, the way that business is run, okay, and potentially, find ways to maintain volumes and perhaps even grow volumes and revenue. So it's really exciting to see that VOX is playing in this space. And yeah, I would imagine, that for industry colleagues on the line and for those who will listen to or watch this webinar later on, this is certainly something that they will want to, pay close attention to and perhaps have further conversations on.
Fantastic. A quick question. Sorry, back to you, Alan. Just came to me now, by the way. I'm a mobile network operator. I see this presentation. I say, make it so in good old Star Trek terminology. How long, as long as I put the resource as a mobile operator towards it, how long does it take to realistically implement something like this?
It's no different than a normal firewall. As I mentioned, the barrier to entry here is much lower because you don't need to install custom AI GPUs and things like that. This will run on a firewall, and it means that we can and are upgrading all of our current partner MNOs with this latest system, and we're rolling it out carefully, but we're rolling it out to make sure that they all get the benefits of this. As you know, modern CI/CD pipelines, all this sort of techno babble, but at the end of the day, it's very important that once we have proven this, and we have already in a couple of our operator partners, that we are able to push this out and give this benefit everywhere. It doesn't require any extra thing for us. It's a very quick software deployment, and it integrates very well with our current system.
Wonderful. Thank you. Theodore, closing remarks from you, sir.
Well, I think a lot has been said. I think let's just work together to make SMS sexier than WhatsApp for Business.
Yeah. But look at that. Look at that reach. Look at that reach. We've seen it go up 500 million in the past, just over a year. So to 5.75 billion, that is just amazing, amazing reach. Nothing else can still touch it. And that read rate of SMS, we can't talk about open rate anymore, actually, because of smartphones, because so many people actually read SMS without actually officially clicking on it and opening it. But the content read rate of SMS is still absolutely massive. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I always have been, and I will be.
I know. Yeah, actually, it's about trust. I think we all talk about that. It's not, SMS got to a point where prices are high, fraud exists in some regions, and this is what AI can help with, right? Good customer experience, competitive pricing, right? And that shaves off the need for very high rates or anything of the sorts, because we can just do more of that channel and bring value to it. Alan, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish off just to say that, again, while it is supercharging what we currently do with firewalls, one of the use cases that has been mentioned throughout this presentation has been the value-based pricing. So we will be running a webinar led by Theodore and our CEO, Esan, next month. And I think it'll be very interesting for mobile operators to see how they can use this system, but more importantly, how it's going to help them with their revenues with an innovative new commercial model for SMS.
Fantastic. Great. So something that has been around for such a long time, still innovating. That's wonderful. So thank you all for joining us. Hope you've really enjoyed it. Great having Kenichi with us again. Thank you so much. Great seeing you, Theodore, Alan, Maya, and everyone on. We look forward to seeing you at another VOX webinar very soon. All the best. Bye for now, wherever you are.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.